Hey Camden, it is Mrs. Campbell. I think you are the last one that I have left at home right now. So sorry that you're still at home. I hope that you don't get coronavirus, but if you do, you won't have to quarantine anymore. So I think I have one final lesson that I need to quickly go over with you before you take the test on China. So we've talked about the history of China, the physical features, the geography of China, and then we've talked a little bit about China today. I think I've given you that lesson. Yeah, I did. Pretty sure I did. And then Monday the class had their map exam, and I noticed that your mom sent it to me, so I haven't graded yours yet, but I will try to get that done probably today. And then on Tuesday, we had a lesson on Buddhism. We actually watched about a 35-minute video called China's Lost Girls about adoption. And I think it's on Amazon. Actually, I think you have to rent it on Amazon. So I'm not going to have you watch it unless I can find it on YouTube. It was just a heartwarming story. A reporter travels to China with a group of American families that are adopting Chinese daughters. And it's just a really emotional, touching video, and talks about the consequences of China's one child only policy that they've had for the last few years, and they've changed a bit recently. But so anyway, it was pretty good video. So half the class on Tuesday, we watched that, and the second half of class, I gave them kind of a crash course on Buddhism. Buddhism is probably the primary religion practiced in China. They also practice Confucianism and Taoism, and then a few other odds and ends, ancestor worship, like you see in the movie Mulan. But Buddhism is probably their primary religion. They mix them all together, and Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism all have an emphasis on respect for elders or people older in your family, and just being respectful to other people and being kind and doing all of those things that make us good people. So anyway, they deviate a little bit, but that's one of the major things they have in common. So I'm going to send you over this PowerPoint. The first thing that we talked about was that in Buddhism, central to Buddhism is the idea they believe in reincarnation. And the belief of reincarnation is that there are a certain fixed number of souls in our universe, our sphere, and that when a soul, when a physical body dies, the soul then transfers itself or is transferred to another physical body. So you could be potentially reincarnated into a cricket, into a horse, into a fly, into a homeless person, to a princess. It's all determined on how good of a person you've been in a previous life. And so if you're reincarnated into a very powerful person, they would suggest that you've had some seriously good karma, that you have done good things in a previous life to allow you to be reincarnated into a better form. So for a Buddhist, the goal is to become the best human being, to progress to the point where you are reincarnated into the best human being that you can be. And that is based upon if you are essentially at peace with yourself, if you've reached nirvana or enlightenment. Buddha actually means the enlightened one. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. He was a real person, and during his lifetime, he claims to have reached a point of perfect peace or enlightenment within himself, which means that when his physical body died, he was released from the cycle of reincarnation to go and be part of the cosmos, to be part of the energy, to be nothing, basically. Buddhism is really strange. It's actually atheistic. It doesn't believe, Buddhists don't believe in God. I'll take a drink of my coffee, hold on. So if Buddhists don't believe in God or a god or gods, then why is it considered a religion? And the answer to that is because Buddhism answers the question for the person who's Buddhist. The meaning of life and what happens when living and dying, what happens when you die, what's happening when you're alive. And so that a religion answers those questions. And so Buddhism answers those questions without a god. So it's a godless. Now you might run into a Buddhist who says, oh, I believe in that there's gods. But not in the traditional sense that you and I believe in God, or how a Hindu believes in multiple gods. There's a PowerPoint slide that has the definition of reincarnation, and it says, it is the belief that a soul is reborn into a new body following the death of a former body. And there's a really creepy picture that is associated with the word reincarnation on that slide that I think is from a Hindu site, but it basically shows someone being born, growing to maturity, and then getting old and dying and becoming a skeleton, and then their soul kind of moves on and will eventually find another soul or a physical body to occupy. You'll notice the slide before that says the story of Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, and there's a picture of a man with a man bun sitting underneath a tree. That tree is called the Bodhi tree, which means the enlightenment tree. And I'm going to tell you the story of the original Buddha, or Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. So Buddha means that he is the enlightened one. Siddhartha was born in Nepal, which is just north of India. Indians say he was born in India because at the time, I think that area was actually part of India. But anyway, he was born about 450 years before Jesus was born. So in the era of religions, Hinduism and Judaism are considered the oldest religions, both evolving around 2200 BC. And then you have Buddhism, which comes on the scene around 450 or 400 BC. And then you have, of course, Christianity, which arrives on the scene with the birth of Christ or the death of Christ. And then Islam doesn't come onto the scene until much later, around 600 AD. So Islam and Buddhism are separated by almost 1,000 years, or about 1,000 years. So Siddhartha was born into a wealthy family, or a privileged family. His father was considered the king of sorts of the region that he was from. And so Siddhartha was a prince, lived in a palace, probably not the kind of palaces that we think of today, but he lived in a palace in a community. And his father, when he was born, his birth was under unusual circumstances. They say that he had a lotus wheel or something tattooed or marking on his foot, which the Hindu priest told his father meant that he was either going to be a religious leader or he was going to be a political leader. Now his father wanted him to carry on the family name and be the next king, and so he pushed his son towards being a political leader. But because his son he was kind of a feely kind of person, very inquisitive, emotional, sentimental, his father tried to move him away from those leanings and towards military training and that sort of thing, and he decided he was going to shelter him from reality. He didn't want him to have any sympathy for the everyday common average people of his community, and so he sheltered him from sick people, from dying people, from old people. And so Siddhartha grew up until probably about the age of 12, not even knowing that there was such a thing as aging or getting old, or pain or suffering or illness or death. Never saw a funeral, never saw an old person. They were all hidden from him. And so you can imagine the shock to the system when Siddhartha, for the first time, his father actually let him out of the palace to walk around the community. And he saw old people, and he saw people toiling at farming, for instance, or doing physical labor that Siddhartha had never had to do, or people who were handicapped, people that were crippled, people that were blind. He was like, what is happening? It was shocking to his system, and it upset him. And so he began to think about these things and talk to his Hindu priest about these things. And he came to the conclusion that, well, if this is what life is, everything is suffering. Everything is suffering. And so we're all going to die anyway. We're all going to get old. We're all going to get sick. And it bothered him and it troubled him. And he felt like there must be some sort of mechanism to be released from this suffering. Because in his belief system, he was going to be reincarnated over and over again and continue to be put back in a situation where he was going to live, he was going to get old, he was going to die, and he was going to suffer over and over again. And so he did something that was considered sort of normal for the political elite of his era. At this time, he was married and had a son. He decided to abandon his family. Buddhists call it the Great Renunciation. And he left his family seeking enlightenment. And he went out on his own and traveled across the country. And people began to follow him. He was teaching and listening and trying to figure out the meaning of life. He was doing a lot of meditating and fasting. And finally, after 6 years of this, he had perfected the art of meditating. And he was sitting underneath a tree. And he finally reached that place of perfect, what he would describe as bliss, feeling actually nothing, feeling no pain, feeling no desires, feeling no tug of sin, feeling no temptations, feeling no fear. I suspect that he was probably low blood sugar from not eating. He was probably experiencing some psychedelic effects to the intense meditating that he'd been doing. I actually read a story about a young man who was supposed to inherit his father's position as a Hindu priest, and so he was taught how to meditate at a very young age, and it really did involve emptying your mind, finding a place of perfect focus. And for someone who's not a believer or a Christian, when you open up your mind or you empty it and you allow anything to come into it, unbeknownst to you, a lot of evil and dark, sinister things happen. And so this young man said that it was a very dark, evil experience for him. He had visions of evil spiritual things and very scary things. That were induced as a result of this deep meditation. So I suspect that's probably what happened to Gautama that day, or Siddhartha. He probably reached a level of deep meditation and felt nothing. He almost like he was catatonic, or sort of like sitting. I started to say sleepwalking, but he wasn't walking, where he was unaware of his surroundings. He kind of got to that point, almost like he was sleeping. And so at that moment, he says that he reached enlightenment. He came to a place of perfect peace. So enlightenment, or Buddhists use the word nirvana. Nirvana is the goal. And once a person reaches nirvana, they only have to reach it once in their lifetime. They will be released from reincarnation, and their souls will escape this world and become part of a greater cosmos or energy force. The way that I've heard it described, and this is true of Hinduism as well, that you are like a drop of water, and when you reach nirvana or enlightenment and you're released from reincarnation and your soul is released, it's like dropping a drop of water into an ocean. And once the water droplet hits the ocean, it is absorbed by the greater ocean, and it loses its identity. That water is no longer in an individual droplet. It is part of a great, vast ocean. So that's kind of the illustration that they use. And so after this incident, he continued to teach and develop his own theology and pass that on, and it became very much engrossed in Asian culture. One of the kids asked, why do we see so many different pictures and images of Buddha? Like there's the fat laughing Buddha, there's the skinny emaciated Buddha that's got a man bun, who is sitting in a meditative position. There's the Buddhas that you see at nail salons, because a lot of the nail salons are run by Vietnamese people who happen to be Buddhist. And the answer to that is each culture has developed their own historic Buddha. The one that I'm referring to was the original, but each culture has had people who have reached Buddhahood, is what they call it, leaders, teachers, and so they've created images of those people that represent what they looked like. And I think the laughing Buddha or the fat Buddha is from Thailand, I think. There's the golden Buddha, the sleeping Buddha, the laughing Buddha. There's a whole bunch of them, but the one that I'm talking about, the images you see here, is the historical Buddha. Some of the others may be historical as well, but I just don't know for sure. And so last couple slides here. Buddha taught that the way to arrive at nirvana was to follow the Four Noble Truths, and I'll just zip through them pretty quickly. The first truth is that everything in life is suffering. Of course, nobody wants to suffer. The second noble truth is that the cause of this suffering is desire. You don't know pain if you don't know want. So, for instance, or you don't know the joy of music if you've never been to a musical or heard music. You don't know the joy of victory in a sport if you've never experienced defeat. I mean, if you win every game, who cares? But if you lose every game and you finally win one and you beat you're the underdog and you beat the giant on the team, it's like, yeah. And so Buddha taught that the reason that we suffer or feel suffering is because we desire things. We desire achievement, we desire success, and we don't reach those. There are three categories that he taught were areas of desire. A lot of things fall underneath these categories, but sensual desire, so anything that you desire that involves your senses, the ability to smell, taste, see, feel, sexual desires, the desire to be intimate with somebody. These are all things that we desire. It's part of our human condition. But when we can't have those things, it causes suffering. Or if we have those things and then they're taken away from us, it causes us pain. The second one is the desire for esteem, or basically for people to like you. We all want people to like us, and when people don't like us, it creates a lot of hurt and a lot of suffering. And then the last one, he said, is not everybody experiences this desire, the desire to die, to end the suffering, but unable to because you're continuing to be reincarnated. And so that creates suffering, knowing that even if you take your own life, you're going to wake up in another body and you're going to have to relive it all over again, or, be alive again. So all is suffering. That's one. Number two, the cause of suffering is desire. Number three, the way to get rid of suffering is to get rid of desire. So if you don't feel anything, you don't desire anything, you will not suffer. And then fourth, the way to be rid of this desire so that you don't suffer is to do something. This is kind of where it gets interesting. So according to Buddha, the way to get rid of desire, and therefore to get rid of suffering, is to follow a list of rules called the Noble Eightfold Path. And that's the next slide. And essentially, there's a list of a whole bunch of things that if you're a good Buddhist, you should do. You should believe the right things. You should have good teachers. You shouldn't lie. You shouldn't steal. You shouldn't cheat. You shouldn't slander. You shouldn't gossip. You shouldn't be involved in sexual sins. You shouldn't drink alcohol or be addicted to drugs. You shouldn't do jobs that require you to do any of those things. And you should meditate, meditate, meditate. And so there's a whole list. This is just a summary of them. But there's a whole list of things that Buddhists say that in order to become a good enough Buddhist where you stop desiring things, you have to do a bunch of good works. So when it's all boiled down, Buddhism is just like every other world religion that says in order to arrive in some sort of heavenly state, you have to do good things. You have to be a good person. You got to pull your bootstraps up, and you need to do what you can to become the best person that you can become. Of course, as Christians, we recognize the fallacy of that we can never be good enough. It could drive you mad trying to be good enough, and that Jesus was good enough, and that he stood in our place so that we don't have to be good enough. And that's what makes Christianity an anomaly in the world of world religions. You do not need to know the details of the Noble Eightfold Path for the test. It would be helpful to just generally understand it, but you don't have to list anything. You will be required to fill in the blanks for the Four Noble Truths. So it'll say like, all is blank. The cause of blank is blank. Number three, the way to be rid of blank is to be rid of blank. So you basically suffering, desire, and then the way to be rid of desire is to follow the Noble Eightfold Path. So you'll need to know that. And then lastly, I just pointed out to the students, kind of reiterated what I had already said, that reincarnation is a central theme or element of Buddhism, as it is other world religions. It's atheistic. It doesn't believe in gods in the way that we believe in gods. And that Buddhists ascribe to a lot of the same similar moral standards that all other world religions do, including Christianity. Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Sikhism, Taoism, Confucianism, there is a similar code of right and wrong. Don't murder, don't steal, don't cheat, don't lie, etc. That is core to their belief system. In Christianity, it doesn't save you, but it's a response to being saved. In all of these other religions, it's a means to an end. It's how you find salvation. And so I think that's it. Yeah, we had a little extra time in class on Tuesday, and we watched part of Mulan. I'm sure you would have wanted to be here for that. So you're probably watching more movies than you care to watch. So anyway, I am going to send over a copy of all of the PowerPoints in summary, so to make sure that you have them all. And then I'll probably send a hard copy or paper copy of the test home with Chandler, and you can just do it over the weekend, and he can bring it back on Monday. So I hope that works for you. If not, let me know, okay? Bye.